Thank you very much. You hear that sound? To me, that's the sound of a heartbeat. And a picture like this makes my beat go faster. Faster because of the nice sports courts and the anticipation of playing on them. But also faster because of the inequality for the people living on the other side of the wall, not able to play sports. You know, something isn't right here. This picture is from Sao Paulo. And yes, those are private swimming pools on each balcony. But a picture from Cairo would look much the same. Actually, sometimes Cairo seems like one big wall. A membership for a sports club will cost you $10,000. It's not something for me. And sports should be for everyone. So I really think that's a shame. And you know, not all walls are visible. We have walls like the Great Wall in China, and we have walls like the one Reagan asked Gorbachev to tear down in 1987. Those walls are visible, but some walls are not. And if you look at sports, then we also have cultural, we have economic walls. We even have skill walls that keep people from playing sports. Did you know that in Europe, 8 out of 10 adolescents are not physically active enough? Now that's a challenge. Sports should be for everyone. Leisure time is a human right. First of all, by doing sports and being physically active, you will live 5 years longer. But in addition to that, you'll live 6 more years with good health. But that's just the health side of things. Secondly, sports will teach you what it takes to succeed. In sports, it's all about setting a goal, practicing hard, and then do your best. I find that's a formula that works with most things in life, whether we're talking education, job market, or even finding a spouse. Setting an ambitious goal and then putting in a lot of hard work will most likely get you there. Sports will also put you in stressful situations. And you will find yourself facing great challenges. As a 15-year-old boy in Copenhagen, I used to love just that. Riding around on my bike in the summertime across the city together with my best friend Bojan, going out to new playgrounds where we met the local crews on their home turf. Getting pushed around, getting elbowed, falling to the ground but getting back up, that was all part of it. And this was what we loved. You see, being stripped for privileges and up against crews that are much stronger than you can actually be quite thrilling. You know, on the streets, it's about your skills. It's not about your name or your background. You know, sports are actually colorblind. A 3-point shot counts 3 points no matter what. 3 points whether you were born in Copenhagen, in Cairo, or in Kuala Lumpur. And that's the great thing, that you can just be who you are and do your best. After that summer, I continued playing. And some years later, I found myself as the chairman of the biggest basketball club in Denmark. When my fellow board members and I looked down in the gym, we saw that almost all the faces were pale and with blue eyes, just like mine. But that was strange to us, because out on the street, it was a different reality. With 25% of the kids having a foreign background, something wasn't really right. You know, what were we doing wrong? Were we discriminating in our intake of new players? We didn't think so. And we knew from the NBA, which we were all following at the time, that it wasn't lack of non-Caucasian role models and talents that was the problem. But what was the problem then? Combined with the many negative headlines in the media at the time, where young immigrants were often portrayed as gang members and kids who would just make vandalism, we decided to do something about it. We thought that the media and the headlines were blowing things out of proportion. This didn't match what we knew from the neighborhoods we lived in, and we happened to live in those neighborhoods. The kids we knew from those neighborhoods, they just were regular kids wanting to lead regular lives without causing any vandalism. So we decided to reach out to those kids to create a project that would tear down the wall between the white faces in the gym and the diverse youth out in the neighborhoods. We did so, and it became a great success. And 15 years later, the team at Game, consisting of very highly engaged employees and volunteers, are still doing this on a daily basis in neighborhoods less advantaged from Denmark to Lebanon. Speaking of walls, these years we see a lot of immigrants coming to Europe, and actually we see that happening in many places of the world, not just Europe. And the reaction is often putting up fences to keep them away. But what are we so afraid of? You know, immigration and refugees are not a new phenomenon, and we have a proud history of helping people in need. Yes, the war in Syria is causing more people to leave their homes than we've seen historically. But the reason and the answer to that challenge has never been to put up walls, and never will be to put up walls. Actually, we have to remember that the EU and other developed countries around the world are facing much greater challenges. And these are, in fact, the demographics, with the many people going on retirement these years, the baby boomers leaving the job market, and the birth rates continuing to fall. In 50 years, we'll have only half as many people in the working age for every person aged 65 years and older. Now that's a challenge. But if we face that challenge, together with the many immigrants coming to the countries these years, and we face it by focusing on welcoming and integrating them, we can actually have the solution for the problem lying right at our feet. When we create shared identities, we can overcome those challenges together. I believe that we should do much more to focus on the things that we have in common, instead of focusing and addressing relentlessly the differences that keep us apart. And sports are actually great at creating shared identities, especially team sports. Shared identities and the fact that we actually, on the court, work together towards one goal is a way that these things can be addressed, and we can take the first steps towards a future together. I'd like you to meet Shuaib, one of our members from the early days. Shuaib came down to the court together with his mom. He wasn't really much interested at all, but his mom was. So she pulled him down there with an arm around his neck and pushed him right down in the middle of the event that we had that day. I clearly remember it. She knew that if Shuaib got into sports, he would be more likely to make new friends and get a good health. So that's what she did. Shuaib, well, he was more in it for the Nike jersey that every new member got that year. So Shuaib got his jersey, and then we didn't see much of him for the rest of the season. But the next year, he came back, and he played his heart out at every practice down on the court. We were really happy to see that, but we were even more happy to see that a few years later, he joined a sports club. That's when we decided to put him in our annual report as one of the success stories about a kid from a less advantaged neighborhood who competed and played together with the rest of the youth of the city. The thing was that I then met him some years later, and I asked him, "How's the season going down in the club?" And he answered, "I quit. I froze." You know, first of all, because I thought it was a shame that Shuaib no longer played sports, and because he would miss out on so many good things from playing together with a more diverse group than what lived in his neighborhood. But also for more egoistic reasons, because we had promoted him as one of our role models in game. Was he still a role model? Not really. But the good thing is that there actually was a good reason for him to quit. I immediately thought that it was maybe the gangs that had sucked him in, or maybe religion had taken the place of sports in his life. But it turned out that the answer was school. School was what had made Shuaib quit his team, because his coach had increased the number of practices from 4 times a week from 3 times a week to 4 times a week. And with games in the weekend, Shuaib found himself in a situation with no time for homework. And of course, I was sad to see that he was no longer playing sports in the club, but after all, school and education is, after all, more important than sports. So this is not where the story about Shuaib and the Nike jersey ends. Actually, it ended much better, because the following season, Shuaib decided, together with one of his friends, to become the coaches down in the game zone where he'd actually played himself some years ago. So, together with Mohammed, Shuaib was running the game zone in Copenhagen, where younger siblings and neighbors could come down and get onto the court, get into sports, be activated in order to get a more healthy lifestyle and meet new friends. So Shuaib paid back what he once received from his coach. I'd also like you to meet 2 other people, Khurram and Samir. And the story may seem the same as Shuaib, but this is actually on a much bigger scale. Khurram is the one on the left with the Nike shirt, and Samir is the one on the right with the hat. Just like Shuaib, they had joined game, playing sports out in the local neighborhood where they lived some years earlier. They had also started playing basketball in a club, but they had found themselves a bit awkward because the level in the sports club was much higher than what they were used to compete at. Higher, not because the kids were better than them in any personal way, but because they had been playing for many more years. They had been playing since the age of 4 or 5 years, while Khurram and Samir, as young teenagers, had just started playing sports. So, after a year or 2, Khurram and Samir were back out on the street. That's when they approached game. They wanted a place to play in the wintertime, because playing on the street was not a problem for them. If you look at it in a health perspective, it's just as good playing on the street as playing on a wooden floor indoor. The problem was the Danish winter, because with so many rainy days like today, with snow, ice, and cold weather, it's just not possible to play all year round on the street. So we asked them to dream big, and they came up with the idea of an indoor street sports facility. What we did was actually to help them frame their idea and then write a letter that we could help them take to the mayor. They wrote the letter, and we made sure that the mayor actually read the letter. And the next step was to go around town scouting for good industrial buildings not being used that could host this idea, to host Khurram and Samir's dream of an indoor facility with asphalt, where they could play on the street all year round without getting wet. They were armed with a notebook, a digital camera, and their dream. And they went around town and ended up finding several places that we could then approach the mayor with and have them help out in selecting which one would actually work. The biggest dream was of 1,000 square meters of asphalt for indoor sports. But of course, we didn't really vision or believe that this would materialize. What happened after getting the mayor onto the court, then it went quite smoothly. It all in all took 7 years, but we always thought that, well, by next winter we'll have a place. And that's what kept them going. They pushed through, and they ended up with this place. Not 1,000, but 2,200 square meters of asphalt. So actually double the size that their wildest dream. This is just one of the halls. There's also one for parkour, street soccer. There's one for dancing. There's even a DJ school and a lot of hangout around the facility. What we did was we had some architects draw a new facility in this old building where they opened up the walls in order to create better access from the street. So the sports activity isn't hidden away as we see in many gyms where they most often don't have any windows or gates out to the street. This place, in an architectural way, is opening up in order to let more people in on sports. It's lowering the threshold to sports so more kids can participate. And one thing is the architecture. The other thing is the opening hours, because it has an entrance mill that's open 24/7, almost 365 days a year. Down here, we see all kinds of people coming. We have, of course, the people you've already met, the young gentlemen, but we also have art directors from ad agencies and at-risk youth participating in psychosocial programs. They all come down here, they all play, and they all sweat and laugh together. It's open close to 365 days a year, and it's even open on Christmas Eve, as many of our members don't celebrate Christmas. To them, this is Christmas. We are very happy to see that Kuram and Samir's dream has materialized and that they could help the city of Copenhagen adjust to the changing needs of the youth to create a more flexible and more accessible sports facility. We've asked our members what they think of it, and 90% feel that they're actually welcomed, and 2 out of 3 build new friendships, and 2 out of 3 also feel that they learned something down here that they can use in other aspects of life. This place became a reality, not because Kuram and Samir has supernatural powers, or Game or any other have supernatural powers. It came into reality because 2 young boys were allowed to dream, and the dream was actually listened to. I think we can do much more together if we see each other as a resource, not as a problem. In the coming years, Game will take this idea that Kuram and Samir came up with and try and seed it in other cities around the world. Because we see that there's a need in many places to create more access to sports, to get the kids from Sao Paulo to Cairo into sports over the wall or maybe through the wall and get into sports. This way, we can see people as a resource, not as a problem, and we can learn to meet each other on the court. So what's on your list? Why not use sports to break down barriers between people in order to create a more sustainable future? When I go out to many of these neighborhoods and speak to the young people and the children out there, I often find that the dreams that they have are much more conventional than you would typically think. Most of them just want a house, a spouse, and a job. I believe that our goal and our duty is to keep those dreams alive and make it probable that they will materialize one day. If we don't do that, then despair will take hold And many of these young people will seek recognition and identity through illegitimate networks. And we can't allow that to happen. We have to reach out to these groups in order to create together a more sustainable future for our cities, for our countries, for the world. So the question is not if we can play or not, because if everyone is allowed a chance to play, then it's all up to the individual, and if you really want it, you will learn it. So we can all play, but only if we get the chance. Thank you very much.